Have you ever loved someone so much that you'd stand under the scorching sun, through storms, through pain, just to protect what was left of them? There's a woman in the Bible most people skip right past. She doesn't have a long story, no miracle moment, no famous speech. But her silence, it thundered through heaven and changed a nation. Her name was Rizpah. It all started with a famine. The land was dry. The rivers whispered low, and the fields, once golden with grain, lay cracked and thirsty under the sun. Year 1 passed, then year 2. And by the 3rd year of famine, people weren't just praying anymore. They were pleading. Israel was hungry, not just for food, but for answers. King David, now older and wiser, finally turned his heart toward the Lord, with a question that had probably haunted him for a while. Why is this happening, God? What is it that we've missed? And God answered, it is because of Saul, because of what he did to the Gibeonites. Now let's pause for a moment, because this is important. Back in Joshua's time, the Gibeonites tricked Israel into making a peace treaty. Even though it was made under false pretenses, Israel honored it. A covenant was a covenant, and God takes covenants seriously. But Saul, in his zealous drive to purge the land, broke that sacred promise. He tried to wipe the Gibeonites out, maybe to please the people, maybe to assert his power. But whatever the reason, it brought blood guilt on the nation. A wrong that had never been made right. And now, years later, the land itself was crying out for justice. David did something remarkable. He didn't make excuses for Saul. He didn't try to cover it up or move on. He went straight to the Gibeonites. Tell me, he said, what can I do for you? How can we make this right so that you'll bless the Lord's people again? The Gibeonites were clear. We don't want silver or gold. We don't want revenge on all of Saul's descendants. But give us 7 of his male heirs, and we will execute them before the Lord to atone for the blood Saul shed. David agreed. Just like that, 7 sons were chosen. Among them were Armoni and Mephibosheth, the 2 sons of Rizpah, a woman who had once been a concubine of Saul. She was powerless, forgotten, with no voice in the court and no chance to protest. Her sons were selected, not for anything they had done, but to pay the price of their father's sin. And as quickly as the decision was made, they were taken, hanged, exposed on a hillside in Gibeah. No trial, no last words, no proper burial, just silence. Can you imagine it? Rizpah probably heard the news not from a herald or a court official, but from a whisper in the streets. She would have run. Maybe she climbed that hill herself. Maybe she saw them, her boys, hanging there under the open sky, caught between justice and politics, between God's wrath and man's choices. She couldn't stop what happened, but she made a choice. She would not leave them. There's no sound in the world like a mother's cry. It doesn't come from the throat. It comes from somewhere deeper, a place where love and pain live side by side. And on that hill in Gibeah, that sound echoed in silence. Rizpah's sons, Armoni and Mephibosheth, had been executed by royal command, not because of any crime they committed, but because of a deal made between a king and a people her sons had never harmed. They were born into a broken legacy, and now they had paid with their lives. But their deaths weren't the end. Their bodies were left hanging, not just for a moment, not even for a day, but for weeks. It was meant to be symbolic, an offering of justice before the Lord. But for a mother, it was cruelty beyond comprehension. In Israelite culture, it was unthinkable to leave a body unburied. To allow the elements to consume the dead was considered shameful, a curse. Even enemies, even criminals, were often buried by sunset. But not this time. There was no burial, no mourning procession, no comforting arms, only exposure to the birds of the air and the beasts of the field. Rizpah stayed. She found a piece of sackcloth, rough, uncomfortable, a symbol of mourning, and she laid it on a rock near the foot of that hill. That rock became her vigil, her altar, her battlefield. From the first day of the barley harvest, she sat there, watching, guarding, grieving. She drove off birds with her bare hands, chased away wild animals in the dead of night, slept little, ate less. She endured the blazing sun, the whipping wind, and the lonely darkness, all because of love. And the people, they walked past her, they whispered. Maybe they pitied her, maybe they mocked her, maybe they simply ignored her. But she wasn't there for them. She was there for her sons, to honour what remained of them, to protect their dignity, even in death. Because a mother's love doesn't die when her children do. It lives on, and sometimes it sits quietly on a rock in the middle of nowhere and refuses to leave. Her voice may be gone, but her presence, still there. No one asked her to, no one expected her to. But grief, real grief, doesn't follow protocol. It doesn't care about what's dignified. It just holds on. Because sometimes love doesn't look like a miracle. Sometimes it just doesn't walk away. And hey, if this story is touching your heart like it did mine, go ahead and hit that like button. Subscribe if you want more powerful Bible stories like this one. And don't forget to share it with someone who needs hope today. We're just getting to the moment that changed everything. Stay with me. Word travels slowly when grief is involved. Most people had forgotten. The executions, old news, the famine, starting to fade as the rain clouds finally gathered. But Rizpah was still there, and eventually her quiet persistence reached the ears of the king. David heard about the woman on the hill, the one who hadn't moved, the one who kept watch over the dead when no one else cared. Maybe it stopped him mid-conversation. Maybe it stirred something in him. Regret, humility, or just the echo of a forgotten promise. But something in her act cut deeper than politics. This was no longer about Saul. This was about a mother. A woman who refused to let dishonour be the last word over her sons. And finally, David acted. The king ordered the bones of Saul and Jonathan to be gathered, and along with them, the bodies of the 7 sons, Rizpah's boys included. He gave them a proper burial, no longer hanging in shame, no longer rotting in silence. They were laid to rest in the tomb of Kish, Saul's father, a place of legacy, not disgrace. And the rain that fell? It wasn't just water on dry land, it was closure, a nation's cleansing. A mother's final prayer answered. Rizpah didn't raise an army, she didn't write a law, she didn't even speak in this entire story. But her actions spoke volumes. She turned shame into honour. She turned silence into justice. And because of her, even a king remembered mercy. Rizpah didn't fight with laws. She fought with presence. She didn't demand attention. She drew it by enduring what others turned away from. And because she stayed, a king moved. Because she stayed, a nation remembered. Because she stayed, broken sons were buried with dignity. Rizpah reminds us that love isn't always grand. It's often quiet, stubborn, and enduring. So if you ever feel unseen, unheard, like your pain is stretched out across a forgotten hill, remember Rizpah. God sees, heaven notices, and even kings take action when love refuses to leave the grave. This was the story of Rizpah, the silent warrior. If this touched your heart, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video. You never know who might need to hear this today. Until next time, keep holding on. Because even in the waiting, God is still working.